It was scary, but I knew I had to do it. I made sure no one saw me and went inside. I crept along the hallways, trying to avoid cameras. I was following a base employee. Soon he stopped in front of a metal door, punched in the code on the lock, and went in. I caught a glimpse of my sister behind the door. My heart immediately started pounding. The employee was gone for about 10 minutes. After he came out and disappeared around the corner, I punched in the same code and walked into the room. Peggy was still there. I was so glad to see her. I ran up to my sister, hugged her tightly, and almost burst into tears. Come on, we have to get out of here. Just as soon as we were about to leave, we heard footsteps behind the door, and someone walked in. Hi, I'm Ellie. When my younger sister was born, my parents devoted all their time to her. At first, that didn't bother me, but then everything changed. Peggy was very smart from a very young age. She quickly learned to speak, read, and count. At the age of 4, she was already far ahead of her peers in terms of development. One day, I was sitting in my room trying to do math homework. I'd never been good at exact sciences, so I was filming and planning on searching for a solution online. Peggy came in and sat next to me. I wasn't paying her any attention until she suddenly handed me a piece of paper. The solution to the problem was written on it. I looked at my sister in surprise. Had she copied it from somewhere? But Peggy said that she had solved it herself. I gave her a couple more tasks and she quickly came up with solutions. I found a website with the answers and I couldn't believe my eyes. Peggy had done everything right, but that was simply impossible. That's when I made a huge mistake. I told my parents about it. Of course, they were delighted and oohed and awed over Peggy the whole evening. I had problems at school. A month before that, we got a new math teacher. She disliked me at first sight. She constantly picked on me and humiliated me in front of the whole class. I got sick of it and asked my parents to talk to her. They agreed, but then immediately started discussing Peggy and forgot about my request. One day, the math teacher gave us tasks that didn't even have solutions on the internet. Even straight-A students didn't know how to solve them. I knew that if I couldn't do it, I would be finished. The teacher wouldn't scold the other students, but she would mock me for sure. When I got home, I asked Peggy for help. To be honest, I didn't hold my breath or anything. The tasks were very difficult. Peggy sat down and opened the books our parents had given her. In the evening, she gave me a solution. I was absolutely shocked. I wasn't sure that she had done everything right, but it was better than nothing. As we were talking, our parents came up to us. Peggy, you're so smart. Ellie, you need to be more like your sister. You're a high school student, but you can't do anything yourself. My mom's words really hurt me. I'm actually doing well at school. It's just that the math teacher is picking on me. My parents didn't want to listen to me, and we had a fight. The next day, the math teacher asked me to write the solution on the blackboard. Turned out to be correct after all. You should have seen her face. She got angry and gave me some tasks that were even more difficult. I wanted to ask Peggy for help again, but I was in for a surprise at home. My sister and parents were sitting in the living room with several TV guys. It turned out that my parents had contacted some show, and Peggy was given a chance to take part in it. It was very late by the time everyone had left. I asked my sister for help anyway, but my parents intervened. Ellie, have some decency. Peggy's tired. Deal with your problems yourself. That hurt me. My parents had always loved their younger daughter more, but lately they had become obsessed with her. I came to school without a solution. The math teacher gloated and scolded me in front of the whole class. I got along with my classmates fine, but they still laughed at me. It was all terribly unpleasant. Why did the teacher hate me so much? Why wouldn't she leave me alone? A few days later, Peggy was on TV. Everyone at school asked me about her. My classmates guessed that she had been the one to solve that difficult task for me. The lamest thing was that the math teacher did as well. I got an awful mark and was made to clean up the classroom as punishment for cheating. She infuriated me. I decided to go to the principal. However, when I started talking about the math teacher, he suddenly interrupted me. I saw the show with your sister. She's a genius. I'd like to talk to your parents, although Peggy is still a little girl. I will gladly accept her into my school, even let her skip a grade. I almost burst out crying then and there. No one cared about my problems at school either. Everyone was always talking about my sister. It annoyed me so terribly that Peggy was much smarter than me. I wish I had been born a genius too. My sister's popularity was growing rapidly. After the first show, she was invited to more of them. Our parents got good money for her participation. New things appeared in our house, and Mom and Dad even fixed it up a bit. It all put me in a foul mood. One day, I was playing on the computer when Peggy came up to me. She said that she had been writing some programs and linked up our phones. Now, you'll always know where I am. We're sisters, and we should stick together. It's great, isn't it? I wasn't interested in it at all, and rolled my eyes. Peggy was trying to be nice, but she just pissed me off. One day, the principal invited Peggy to speak at my school during a math lesson. Our usual teacher was sick and another one was subbing for her. Peggy easily solved complex equations on the blackboard. Everyone was gaping at her. Things were going fine until one of my classmates made a joke. Seems like the younger sister got all the brains. I was grinding my teeth with anger. It was the last class and I wanted to cheer myself up after it. I invited my friends to a cafe, but you know what? They refused so that they could spend more time with Peggy. That was the last straw. I threw a fit and went to the cafe alone. I sat there for a while and then decided to wander around the city. I was in a terrible mood. Then I noticed a guy surrounded by people. I got curious and came closer. He was talking about a new boxing club and inviting everyone to the first free lesson. The guy noticed me and smiled. Do you want to give it a try? Boxing is a great sport. It helps to let off steam. Let off steam? That was exactly what I needed. That evening, I went to the intro class. The guy's name turned out to be Jacob, and he became my trainer. I liked boxing and really did feel better after training. I started going to the club almost every day. It helped me get rid of all the negative emotions. Jacob and I talked a lot, and I really liked him. After the math teacher got better and came back to school, I had to go back to cleaning the classroom. One day, I saw a business card she had dropped. It had the logo and contacts of a science center on it. I turned it over in my hands and threw it into the trash. Soon it was Parents' Day at school. The students were asked to create a family tree with photos of their ancestors. I didn't want to waste time on such nonsense, and decided to get it over with quickly. After getting home, I drew a small sketch, and then I opened the family photo albums. Surprisingly enough, I lost track of time. At one point, I came across a photo that made me doubt my eyes. In the photo, Dad was standing next to my math teacher. Did they know each other? When Dad came home from work, I tried to ask him, but he waved me off. Ellie, later. I have absolutely no time. That made me so angry. Of course he didn't have time, because he needed to promote Peggy. Then Mom broke in and we had a fight as usual. It was so unfair, I wanted to scream. I wish Peggy hadn't been born at all. As soon as I shouted it, I saw my sister walk into the room. She heard my words, burst into tears, and ran away. I bit my lip, feeling guilty. I realized that I had gone too far, but was too prideful to admit it. After locking myself in my room, I fell on the bed and burst into tears as well. Soon, everyone in town knew who Peggy was. They called her Little Genius and Megamind. Different companies constantly called our parents and asked about her. I felt out of place at home, and I was terribly lonely. Jacob was the only one who understood and stood by me. I don't know what I would have done without him. Even though I was in low spirits, I decided to find out why my dad and math teacher were in that photo together. There was a date and an address written on the back of it. I googled it and found out it was an address of an old photo studio. I didn't get my hopes up, but asked the employees if they knew anything anyway. I showed them the picture, but no one recognized my dad or the math teacher. I got upset and was about to leave when an elderly cleaning lady suddenly came up to me. I've been working here for a long time, and I have a good memory for faces. I remember this couple very well. They were so in love and happy. Wait, in love? Had my dad had an affair with my math teacher? What a turn! The next day, I barely sat until the end of the math class, and everyone had left the classroom. I came up to the math teacher and told her bluntly that I knew about her and my dad. Just imagine. She didn't even deny anything. Yes, your father and I used to love each other, but then he met your mother and she stole him. You look just like her, a living reminder of what happened to me. Is that why you hate me so much? She didn't say anything, but she didn't have to. That was so unfair. Even at school, I suffered because of my parents, and they didn't even care. In the evening, I told Jacob everything during practice. Aside from the whole thing with the math teacher, I was worried about Peggy. She was still sulking, and I felt ashamed of myself for what I had said. I think you and Peggy need to go out without your parents. A cool children's cafe opened nearby recently. You could take her there. It seemed like a good idea, and I decided to go for it. When I came home, my parents were talking to the cameraman. I found Peggy and suggested we go for a walk. She was still angry with me, but agreed. We came to the cafe Jacob had been talking about. The weather was great, and I decided we should sit at a table outside. I saw Peggy on a chair and went to order food. While paying for the cakes, I suddenly noticed that Peggy was gone. I panicked, started looking around and saw her being put in a car and taken away. What the hell? I ran after them, but of course I didn't catch up. I was freaking out. What was I supposed to do now? Go to the police? Call my parents? No, they would definitely kill me. I suddenly remembered about the program Peggy had installed on our phones. I could track her location. Peggy was being taken somewhere out of town. I got a taxi and headed there. There was some sort of closed database at the address the program was showing me. There was no easy way to get inside, but I got lucky. An employee came up to the door, punched in the code, and I slipped in behind him, unnoticed. In the hallway, I suddenly noticed a sign with the name of the organization. It was some kind of science center. The logo seemed very familiar to me. Where could I have seen it? But of course, the same logo had been on the business card I'd found in the math classroom. My teacher was somehow connected to Peggy's kidnappers. Maybe she wanted to take revenge on our family. I crept along the hallways following the employee. There were cameras everywhere, but I tried to avoid them. Soon he stopped at a metal door, punched in a code, and went in. I caught a glimpse of my sister behind the door. My heart immediately started pounding. The employee was gone for about 10 minutes. After he came out and disappeared around the corner, I punched in the same code and walked into the room. Peggy was still there. I was so glad to see her. I ran up to my sister, hugged her tightly, and almost burst into tears. There was a table covered with papers in the corner of the room. I looked through them and realized that the things that were going on in the center weren't quite legal. They studied different phenomena. They had probably decided to study Peggy, who was unusually smart for her age. How dare they? I took my sister's hand. Let's go. We have to get out of here. Just as we were about to leave, we heard footsteps behind the door, and someone walked in. I turned around and saw my math teacher. She was wearing a white lab coat just like that employee, so she really was involved. While I was trying to figure out how to outsmart her, she had come closer. Ellie, don't be afraid. I want to help you. Come on, I'll get you out of here. Yeah, sure. I pretended to trust her, and Peggy and I followed her into the hallway. As soon as she turned away, I started dragging my sister in the opposite direction. My heart was pounding like crazy, and my clothes were sticking to my wet back. I promised myself I would never hurt my sister again if we got out. We had almost reached the exit when our path was suddenly blocked. No, it couldn't be happening. Standing in front of us was Jacob. He looked at me and grinned nastily, still trying to run away. I don't understand. What are you doing here? This is my main job. Our center has tried to convince your parents to let us study Peggy many times. Her abilities are phenomenal, but they refused. I invited you to the boxing club to earn your trust, and then I suggested you and Peggy go to a cafe without your parents. You were distracted, and it was easy to take her away. It was a nightmare. I couldn't believe that it was all really happening. Several more employees in white coats came up to Jacob and started moving towards us. I couldn't think of a way to escape. But then, the front door swung open and cops ran into the building. They arrested all the employees, including Jacob. Our parents walked into the base after them. They immediately rushed towards Peggy. Daughter, are you okay? Did they do anything? Does anything hurt? Peggy freed herself from their embrace, came up to me and took my hand. Ellie is your daughter too. Weren't you worried about her? Our parents looked at each other embarrassed. The atmosphere turned very awkward. To smooth it over, I asked how the cops had found us. And then, Peggy surprised everyone once again. I hacked into the computer in that room and sent information from it to the police departments. To say that everyone was shocked would be to say nothing. However, Peggy looked completely unperturbed. Our math teacher suddenly walked into the hall. When our parents saw her, they froze up. My teacher explained to the police that she wasn't working there anymore, and even in the past, she hadn't been committing any crimes, just making calculations. Then she had quit and started to work at a school. But recently, she had found out that her former colleagues were planning on studying Peggy without her parents' permission. She knew that it was illegal and decided to intervene. She wanted to help Peggy no matter what. Ellie, I owe you an apology. What happened was neither your nor Peggy's fault. I've been mean to you. The police did not arrest her, and she left. I apologized to Peggy, too. I was ashamed of myself for constantly being annoyed with her. She forgave me. That's it. Since then, Peggy and I have been inseparable. We go on walks, and she helps me with my studies. At school, my math teacher no longer picks on me, and we've even become friends. My parents started treating me better. It just feels like they're doing it to please Peggy, and not because they want to. I'm still holding a grudge against them.
I've always heard that being homeschooled was boring. And I guess sometimes it could be true. You don't get to meet a lot of people. You don't get to make new friends. The only people I know are my parents, my cousins, and the 3 tutors my mom and dad hired to teach me. But I never got lonely. And my life was amazing. See, my parents are both owners of a huge game developing company. They're huge gamers themselves. So as soon as I could speak, mom and dad have been sharing their passion with me. While most kids are prohibited by their parents from playing video games, I was encouraged to do so. My first ever birthday gift was an Xbox. I would play day in and day out. On one condition, of course, that I finish my homework before I put a controller in my hand. What's more is that mom and dad paid me for it. For every hour that I put into playing games, They paid me $100. I was their most important game tester. I would be the first one to try out every new game they made. And depending on whether or not I enjoyed it, they would either release the game or scrap it altogether. Not everyone agreed with my parents' methods, though. I heard the neighbors talking behind my mom and dad's back when they came to visit. They would express their concerns about me being cooped up at home and being in front of a screen most of the time. And the kids in our neighborhood didn't like me at all. I think they were jealous that mom and dad let me do what I want. And they were jealous of the fact that I had all the games I wanted and all the consoles that their parents never got for them. I had all the Xboxes, all the PlayStations, 3 gaming PCs, and every handheld imaginable. Well, they had to do chores. I was getting paid to play games. I thought having lots of toys would make making friends much easier. I thought I could invite them over and they'd like me. But they only came for my toys. They didn't care about me at all, and they certainly didn't want to be friends. In fact, whenever they'd come over to visit, they'd grab my controller from me and banish me from the game room. "We don't want you in here, Nolan." "Yeah, you're weird. You have no friends and you're homeschooled. Homeschooled kids always turn out weird. I bet you'll grow up to become a creep. Now get out." They didn't care that it was my console, my game room, or my house. They treated me like I was some sort of pest. High school was different, though. I convinced my parents to send me to a regular school, and because I begged and promised mom and dad that I'd make sure I'd get top grades, they eventually let me. It was tough. I didn't know anyone, and I was a huge nerd. At first, some people were interested in getting to know the new kid, but when I opened my mouth, everything fell apart. I had no idea how to talk to other people, and most of the time, I'd ramble on and on and on and on and on and on about boring subjects. Eventually, I got branded as the school weirdo, and not many people wanted to hang out with me. There were a few people who did hang out with me, but it wasn't great. They only wanted to be my friends because of the things I had. Whenever there was a big game release, they would use me to ask my parents to give them the game before it hits the stores, and they would constantly badger me about getting free merch. They supported me whenever I'd compete in esports tournaments, but only so that they could get free tickets and sit in the VIP area. They've weaseled their way into more than a few exclusive events and Comic-Cons just by being my friend. And at first, I was happy to share all the perks in my life. After all, they were my friends. But then they stopped talking to me at school. They would ignore me whenever they didn't need anything from me. And when I'd try to sit with them, they'd shoo me away. It got to a point where they treated me like they didn't know me at all. Pfft, why are you here? Can't you, go eat somewhere else? Yeah, can't you see we're talking here? Unless you've got a new game you're giving us, you can't sit with us. Now leave. The only time I got to really see them was when there was a sleepover or a party at my house. Whenever that happened, they were all in attendance, and they acted like angels in front of mom and dad. But as soon as they left us alone, they'd push me out of the room and force me to sit outside. Luckily, high school didn't last forever, and in college, I finally got over my awkward phase. I met a pretty girl called Hanako, and we hit it off instantly. She and I liked a lot of the same things. She was a gamer too, and we spent a lot of our time talking about our favorites and playing together. One day, my mom and dad hired me to officially be a game tester for their company, and I convinced them to hire Hanako as well. We studied during the day, and at night, we played to our heart's content. Hanako and I fell deeply in love. Or, at least, I did. Because one night, as I was sitting in the dark with my mom, my friends, and our coworkers getting ready to surprise Hanako for her birthday, she walked in with someone none of us were expecting. It was my dad. And they were kissing. They had no idea we were there. As they made their way into the house, Hanako turned the lights on. She jumped in utter shock. She was so mortified at discovering that everyone she knew was there. It looked like her spirit left her body. Happy birthday. I guess. Dad went into panic mode. Nora, sweetheart, it's not what it looks like. Really? Were you giving your son's girlfriend first aid? Was she drowning from the air so you had to resuscitate her? I want you out of the house, Joe. I want you out tonight. Baby, Nora, sweetheart, calm down. It's nothing. She's just a fling. Come on now. You know how it is with these girls. They attach themselves to powerful men like me because they want to get ahead at work. I promised her a promotion, that's it. Excuse me? Hanako finally snapped out of her shock. She was mad. A fling? You liar! You told me you were going to leave her for me! You told her you'd get rid of her and we could finally run the company together! Then she turned to my mom and looked her up and down. You are old news! I'm the new queen in town! Mom wasted no time in slapping her across the face. You'll be homeless and broke before I let any of that happen, Missy. I admire your ambition, but you flew too close to the sun. As it so happens, I invited the entire board of directors tonight, and after this display, I doubt any one of them will side with either of you. I move to remove my soon-to-be ex-husband as CEO and board member. All in favor? One hand rose up from the crowd, then two. Soon, every single board member there had their hands up. Mom smiled at Hanako. Oh, and you're fired, sweetheart. But why is the entire board of directors here? Because I had an important announcement to make. I invited all these people here because I took out a small velvet box from my pocket and I showed them the gold ring inside. The diamond was massive, and when Hanako saw it, her eyes saw dollar signs. Well, this was all a huge mistake anyways. We can still fix this, right? I laughed in her face. Get lost, gold digger! Don't ever come near me again! I threw the ring into the fireplace and walked out of there. I managed to keep the tears in until I was alone, but as soon as I went out and sat down in the garden, I started sobbing like a baby. I thought Hanako was the love of my life. I loved her with all my heart, and just like that, everything was ruined. I didn't know what to do, or how to keep going. But someone showed me kindness that night. I felt a tap on my shoulder, and when I looked up, I saw my secretary, June. She offered me a tissue, and I took it gratefully. I blew my nose and apologized. What for? For losing it? For crying over a stupid gold digger? June giggled. I'm sorry for laughing. I'm not laughing at you. I know. It probably hurts a lot. But if I were you, I wouldn't waste a single tear over someone like that. You are Nolan Summers. You're a prodigy at gaming. You've been an incredible game tester since you were a kid. You've won several international esports competitions. You're a legend amongst gamers. And your family owns the country's biggest game company. If anything, she should be the one crying now. I smiled at her. Thank you. You're very kind for saying all that. I'm just stating facts. You're amazing, and any girl would be lucky to have you. Thanks to June, I learned to get back up and try again. I focused all my energy into work. I developed amazing games with my mom, and when my dad tried to start up his own game company, we crushed him beneath our heels and sued him for using our trademarks and ideas. He and Hanako soon broke up when she realized he was going to be broke for a long time, And she never got any jobs in the gaming industry after news of the scandal broke out. Last I heard, she was flipping burgers for a living. I took the company to new heights. And then, my own pet project won Game of the Year. I was so happy that day that I decided to propose again. This time to June. She said yes. We're 4 years married now, and I can't be happier. We have 2 kids, and I built them both an amazing game room. One day, when they're old enough, June and I will share with them the wonderful world of gaming that I discovered when I was little.